This is the Global TV Network broadcasting today live from Bentonville, Arkansas, and San Diego, California. Now, never the twain shall meet, but someday I'll get there, I know. So our special guests today are Alphonso Dennis, who's VP Sales with a great organization called Go Culture. He's going to tell us about that today. And also on this program is a new and good friend, uh, Mr. Bruzzi. Hello, welcome.
Good morning, Ed. How are you?
Great, great. I welcome you both to Global TV. So we're going to discuss better understanding DE&I and what's that mean, and corporate strategy and tactics. You guys have a lot more information than me. I just have some questions to ask. And this program will be approximately 45 minutes, and then we'll jump off. But first, I want to say that our program is sponsored, and we have a really quick and cute video. So the sponsors are typically service providers, of course, having to do with mobility or real estate, things related to mobile talent. And we're in pursuit of underwriters for our series of 350 broadcasts between now and the end of 21. That's about 1 hour a day, 5 days a week. So that, if it's all good, can reach an audience total of over 250,000, based upon the Google Analytics, if we can believe all that BS. So what we have is a long list of corporate participants and service providers, whether they're tax and legal or banking or geniuses in other realms. We target the distribution of these programs direct, as well as through our own network and LinkedIn groups. And that's how we get to those numbers. The fact that the programs are, like this program in particular, and by the way, this will be edited and not in the final version. This program will be seen a year from now, just as strongly as it will be seen by the 3 people today. Okay, so I really don't care if we have a big group today. The money for me is in long-term exposure as we build out our library, our resource library of programs based on specific topics such as DE&I and other things. So people can zoom in or in an app we're building. Someday it'll get ready. The people can zoom in on DE&I and bang, your topic and some others will come up. Or in what's a Vendium, that kind of thing. Is it catchy or what? Is it contagious?
Hopefully that's
let's talk about clean and safe. And so today's show is about DE&I as we get into this seriously. It's a serious topic. It's been a serious topic forever, but now it's politically serious. So maybe that's the leverage that's been needed. Who knows? So God willing, things settle down in this country and common sense prevails. Alphonso, may I call you Al, or do you prefer Alphonso?
Ed, you can call me Al or Alphonso. You can call me anything. But, I'm pretty easy. That's a part of that DEI core fundamental empathy piece.
Okay, Al. So as VP Sales of Go Culture, what are you selling?
Well, I don't like the term selling, but Go Culture is very simply a software that is for a better workplace, but I believe it to be a software that is for a better world as well. If anyone and everyone could partake in a very simple turnkey software that focuses on your attitudes and behaviors and enables us to better understand each other and communicate, which is essential to any sort of growth, I think that we're good. The software does that, and it's the only software of its kind. It's the only thing of its kind that can measure soft skills, essentially. And it's, without going into too much detail at this point, it's exciting, and it's something that I would love to share more about.
So are you saying that it's possible to calibrate or to measure culture?
Not necessarily measure culture. I would say more so possible to calibrate and measure our respective attitudes and behaviors and the way that we as individuals, as fellow human beings, the way that we view others and the way that we view the world. So
Yeah.
this is on the individual.
So you can certainly better measure what blows up, what doesn't work.
Absolutely. And it's based on 15 of the most powerful and the most meaningful DEI competency factors. We've got 47 years of research that went into creating those, 13 years of testing, 40 different countries. And it's, again, I'm biased, but it's one of a kind.
Andrew, are you doing the calibration here? Or are you involved in this scientific discovery?
I wish I could say that I was involved in the discovery, but so I am a shameless champion of Go Culture. So although we're separate organizations, I know in the past we joked whether or not I actually worked for Go Culture, because we always plug them wherever we can, because a big piece of what we do with Vendium obviously is in conversational AI. So how to connect people in using technology. And I think that there's a fundamental breakdown in, frankly, both our companies and communities and how we interact. And Go Culture has been a fantastic solution of how to connect people. And we mentioned before, like kind of how politically charged it can be, and how people can look at things like diversity training, and some people will kind of like wince away from it because, like, oh gosh, here comes another unconscious biasy training, or someone's going to tell me how I did something wrong. And kind of the 15 factors that Al's alluding to there is they will go into things like communication initiation. So how likely are you to start up a communication? How comfortable are you leading in a diverse environment? So in times of ambiguity. So it has a lot more to do with just like, there's someone from one race and someone from another race, and here they're interacting. And then these are the things to know before you interact with that person. Because when you're thinking about that, you're actually being conscious of it. And sometimes that causes a breakdown where you're thinking, oh gosh, should I say something to offend someone? Did I, or how are they hearing me? But when you're honing the behavior side of it, which that I think to me as a data geek is the cool part about it, because you're treating the behavioral pieces of things like, well, I was going to say race relations, but it goes well beyond that. Diversity relations, we're communicating across cultures, whether or not they're someone from here to Prague, or from right across the street with your next door neighbor who happens to have more melanin in their skin, or someone that doesn't, and they just grew up differently from you.
So, hey guys, when we come across people who are challenged with empathy and understanding of how different people can be from how they grew up. And again, I want to jump aside here because I really don't believe that people who are mature and grown up are controlled by how they grew up, because they're certainly influenced, but you live your life now as an old guy like me. I'm not doing what I did back then. God forbid, So, how do you teach Nothing political here. It's all business. So, how do you teach someone who's empathy challenged to understand what's going on out there?
Well, first I'll say thank you, Andrew. Hopefully we'll have him. My goal is for him to work directly for Cohen. But for me, it's simply just, it's basic. It's a fundamental thing. We have choices in life, and I've had a number of conversations with Andrew. I guess we'll start out with a conversation that we shared probably about 4 days ago. We were just randomly conversing about being intentional and unintentional damage that occurs every day, all the way across the globe. And I'm nothing special, but I did in junior college. As an undergrad, I did some boxing, and I was training with, or actually I was coaching an individual that was looking to box, and he was a big guy. I did light heavyweight and heavyweight, very, very amateur. But my point is, in training, what Andrew and I discussed in training, we're talking, we're conversing, and this gentleman gets excited, and all of a sudden he just throws a punch, and out of nowhere. And it was unintentional. It was just, he just got excited, and it struck me in the nose. With that, it was unintentional, but it did hurt. My nose hurt. My eyes became hazy. I was okay, but as I look at that and I try to reflect on it and learn from it. Those are things that apply every day and that occur every day. We can unintentionally harm our fellow human beings by not being empathetic. So whether you want to or not, you could sincerely, and well, not sincerely, but you could definitely damage and cause harm from a business standpoint. You can lose millions of dollars. From a life and death standpoint, lives have been lost. So that's important. I think that, and I'm not going to I'm a mushy guy. Okay. So it's okay. But I believe with every fiber of my being that love trumps hate. So with that being said, we have a choice. So are we going to try to be intentional in our loving of our fellow human beings, or are we going to be apathetic to potential pitfalls that create major challenges, such as the climate that we face now? I don't think anyone on this call, or if anyone in the world anticipated 2020, I'd like to become a LinkedIn connection or something of that nature, so that we can engage in the lotto or something like that. So it's about choice, the choice that we have to care and simply love thy neighbor.
What is that sign above your head there to your right? It starts with nothing. I can't really make out what it says, but it looks interesting.
You're referring to me?
Yeah, that sign up right there.
Oh yeah. Nothing can dim the light that shines from within. And it's a quote from Maya Angelou. I believe that you've got to be a light. We all have reasons. Life is a challenge. It's a challenge for everyone. So we all have reasons to have resentment based on, oh, my mother did this to me, or my mother was absent, or my father was absent, or I was abused, or I was shot at, or I just witnessed so many different things that just, put me in a hole. Well, we still have a choice. We have a choice to embrace positivity and be constructive in our behaviors and be intentional in what we do and the choices that we make. And then we have a choice to not be, and we can, we can marginalize the importance of our fellow human beings' worth. And that's kind of what happens sometimes, and that's what creates a challenge. And that's where goal culture comes in a sense that you have the ability to now assess, calibrate, measure based upon those 15 competency factors and find out, okay, this is where there may be a gap and my behaviors may change. I may look at, from an introspective standpoint, I can look at and what I stand for, what my belief systems are, and actually change my behaviors.
Yeah. So, Andrew, I'm not ignoring you, but but
over here captivated myself.
So this, what comes to mind here, and I'm not sucking up to you at all, but the Martin Luther King speech, "I Have a Dream," rings in my head right now, and are the famous lines, but. I'm writing or preparing to do an article for a magazine and I'm using the theme "I Have a Dream," but it's about how to reinvent my business so I can survive financially. But that's the idea, though, and looking at you, of course, and what you're doing, and the troubles that we're experiencing. Andrew, what's your dream? The application of technology to this quote unquote soft stuff?
Yes, and that's a great question. So, so there are a number of challenges when using technology, specifically AI, with human beings. So part of that are there's a whole list of them, but again, we're set on time. But so one, so any natural language processing. So how you say something, right? Then from either verbally or through text or through whatever means of communication. Then another is understanding what someone's saying that may have an accent, and not just an accent from another country, but an accent within the U.S. So obviously, we've all I think we're all a bunch of East Coasters on this call right now, and so even going to the West or to the South or anywhere where I've lived, I've noticed that. Well, not just noticed, but use an example that the biggest form of culture shock I ever experienced was going to Texas. It's hilarious, but it was the first time.
Easy.
Yep, I was right. Al lives in Dallas right now too, so recently headed out. But so in Texas, I was in a gas station, and this lady, I walk in, and she goes, "Hey, how are y'all doing?" I'm the only person. So it's those types of context clues that are a challenge. But I think that's part of the challenge that we're facing even as a culture where, I recently made a post, and I almost put this out on LinkedIn, but I put it out on my Facebook for a couple of reasons. One, it was highly personal, and then two was that it was a little bit too long. And it was about 9/11. Right. And so 9/11 obviously was a trying time for the entire world, frankly. But in the post, I said that I would never, ever, ever want a 9/11 to occur again, but I'd give anything for a 9/12. That on that day, and I would say arguably, if you think about any social dynamics, anything that could be systemic, any human interaction piece that occurred back then, is it worse now? Probably not. It's just that people are looking to solve greater things and calling more attention to it. But on 9/12, people were getting along. Unfortunately, there was conflict with folks that were Muslim or potentially from the Middle East, and that was a problem, obviously. But the human interactions of people from different races, backgrounds, creeds, religions, and even for the folks that were pushing against Muslims, I think they were the minority, and everyone else was saying, hey, no, that is not an appropriate thing to do. Do not turn this into a hate crime situation. And but those are the times when we recognize the things that make us more similar rather than different. So to kind of circle back to your question, from a technology standpoint, technology communicates consistently, right? If we tell an AI to say something, then it will say something in a certain way. So you can make sure that all of your communication is tailored to how your people want to be communicated to, communicates in the form that they want to be communicated to, whether that's text or email or phone call or chatbot. And then you can both receive and send information. And part of that is employee engagement surveys where they can give anonymous feedback.
So I'm looking at a headline that just came in from New York Times, and it says, astronomers have found a potential sign of life in the clouds of Venus. Not Mars, Venus. So what do you think? Ridiculous, huh?
They're from outside our planet.
We can't accept them. One thing I want to, if I may interject, add to your point on the Martin Luther King "I Have a Dream" speech. From a larger perspective, if we look back on Martin Luther King's legacy and we actually listen to some of the things that he spoke to, I think I think a lot of the, well, I would say a lot of the United States population would be surprised. He did. I mean, we honor him, and I know a lot of individuals, a lot of citizens in this great country, look to him as a role model and one of the greatest leaders in the country of, in our history. But unfortunately, I think that his message may have been missed. And also, I think candidly that if he were alive today and he were communicating, he would be ostracized, marginalized, and considered a radical, liberal, something of that effect. But Martin Luther King he talked about, he spoke more to just black and white race. He spoke to socioeconomic status. And I think that most things in this world boil down to the bottom line. That can be problematic, but I mean, I'm a capitalist, I'm an American true and true. But I think that we miss the fact that he was seeking for a bridging of the gap. So you have those that don't have, based on circumstance, based on different variables that don't have what others do have. When you have 4% of the world, essentially 4% of the wealth in our country, approximately, owned by less than 1%. 1% of the population has the equivalent of wealth to almost the majority of the equivalent of the rest of the population. And he was speaking to just ensuring that everyone had an equal opportunity, ensuring that everyone had the ability and had dignity. And he spoke to love, and he spoke to just embracing and not hating. And hate can occur, again, not out of malice, but out of kind of what Andrew alluded to earlier. There's going to be a fringe here. There's going to be a fringe there. We can't focus on the fringe of what's going on now. We need to focus on why what's going on now is going on, and what truly is the reason for it, and how may we create positive progress and focus on a solution and focus on being constructive, because I do not believe that divisive rhetoric is constructive in any way.
So my recollection, I get all of that, but to the extent I can, but my recollection of that time, particularly 68, was nonviolent. That the the powers that be at that time, who are not black, were J. Edgar Hoover, that type, that they were totally afraid, I mean, viscerally afraid of being overrun. And they reacted. And Bull Connor and that group overreacted for sure. But they were just acting out, unfortunately, they were acting out what they grew up as. And George Wallace developed from all that. I mean, these are so now that we look back on this prism, we see it all clearly. But at the time, boy, there was a lot of fear. So
we don't all see it clearly. But go ahead. Hey.
Yeah. So fast forward to now, or recently, with these the gangsters, of multiracial gangsters running through the streets, breaking windows and mayhem. Even here in placid San Diego, it happened that night right down the street here, and it's actually pretty scary and not what I want. And so the Law and Order theme is a marketing campaign, and Mr. Biden better smarten up and co-opt it pretty quick, in my view, or else he's not going to have a chance to show how good a leader he can be. And then we're all going to be in some kind of difficulty, I believe. So how does that relate to, Andrew? How does that relate to, in your opinion, to employees of corporations understanding, or I don't want to say instigating change, because that sounds like a 60s rebel all over again. But how does the bottom up campaign happen, given the corporate work from home environment, remote work, and the corporate leaders are in the office today, and nobody else is in the office today, right? Now, talk about the ivory tower, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or should we call it the ebony tower?
Yeah.
I think we should call it the Universal Tower.
No, that's a great question. But I think there's a few different things to unpack there. So first of all, just so I don't jump over the piece with any of the, I'm going to specifically say the rioters, right? So I recently saw a pretty accurate statistic from what I could tell from multiple sources, was that 93% of the protests are peaceful. I thought that was very heartwarming, right? Like, that's fantastic. Good for 93% of you. Oh my gosh, 7% are not. That is catastrophic. So it depends on what way that you look at it. And the law and order part of it is absolutely true. And I think out of those 7%, they all have their personal agendas, right? That obviously in the news, we go to what's sensational. As people and in corporations, we go to what's sensational. We go to the office gossip. We go to, oh my gosh, did you hear that person got a promotion? Why didn't I get a promotion? Or any kind of interpersonal conflict that can come that can come between us, that then will unite individuals, which is part of the problem. So pulling this
tribalism.
Exactly. So Al already knows where I'm going with this, that when with those 7%, some of them, I believe, are agent provocateurs. They're people going there just to cause a problem. They're going there just to say, look, we cause damage, whether or not they have a specific political affiliation or not. Then you'll have the people that do have a political affiliation for either side. That you may have the super far right that's going in there, throw a brick at a police officer. Look, his head's bleeding. Those darn liberals, and it's then you can also have the extreme left, where they're actually believing this is a revolution, and it can be a revolution and should be a revolution, but for the right reason. So I'm mentioning in a corporate environment, the reason when we end up looking for those points of conflict and the reason why we have those points of conflict is because as humans, bear in mind, we were fundamentally hunter-gatherers for much of our existence, and we're built to be in tribes of about 50 people. One of the reasons why we gossip from an evolutionary standpoint is to connect with another one, because now at this point, I know something you know, we have a shared connection, and I feel like if something goes wrong, you're going to have my back and I'm going to have yours. Now, there's something that I always reference within Vendium, and obviously Al already knew where I was going with this, so I mentioned it even outside as well, is that the sense of tribe is so important. I say that you have a sword and a shield, and the shield is for inside of the gates, and the sword is for outside. You never use your sword inside the gates. If you have conflict with someone, it's fine to bump shields, and it's fine to protect yourself against someone. Assume positive intent. Take the time to understand, because there are no swords allowed within inside the gates, right? They're only for outside the gate. Now, what our goal of a corporation is we can build really strong tribes on teams. Now do that. And then as soon as you have the teams that start adopting it and believing it through and through, then you can connect the teams and have it become something bigger and something bigger and something bigger. Now, in corporations, what we'll often do, sometimes incorrectly, sometimes correctly, depending on how they teach culture, is they go from top down, missing the point that it's very, very easy for individuals to go against the tribe if they feel wronged or slighted. And then at that point, that's when revolutions start.
Well said. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well said.
Wow. Sounds like French Revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. We all stage revolution, just as long as you're fighting the right fight and for the right reason. If you have people in romantic relationships all the time will get into an argument. What's your end goal? Like, what are you all trying to do? If you decide on what your end goal is, at that point, you're just talking about the best way to get there, rather than, no, you're wrong because you're wrong. Or now at this point, now we're upset because you're wrong because you hurt my feelings. Or like in points, it could be you're wrong because of history, which unfortunately we can't go back. How do we move forward?
So behind you, I see a whiteboard, Andrew. Yeah. So why not a blackboard?
Oh goodness! A multi
I'm trying to I'm just trying to lighten up here. We don't want to
No, this is light. This is a phenomenal conversation. It's light.
I think I ended up making a comment very similar to that with a friend of mine recently. Because of those tension, and that's actually, Ed, you hit the nail on the head with that. I think that's part of the challenge of where we have so much sensitivity put in the wrong spaces, right? Like, my sensitivity comes if I see someone being done wrong in a certain way, right? They're skipped over for promotion, or if they are marginalized in some way. If someone actually attacks them, then my sensitivities will absolutely jump in. But I use so my family is Italian, and I use the joke that my dad will pick on Italians worse than anyone else I've ever seen. So he'll use derogatory terms against Italians. Sir, you need to look in the mirror, but because it's like a non-offensive thing to him. And I do think that language has a lot of power to it. So I don't mean to negate that. But what I mean is that we don't want to be distracted by saying, and this is largely what the news media does to us, is that they'll say, the fight's over here, look over here. Meanwhile, everything else is occurring.
It's the summit of a NASCAR event. It's a crash. Everyone focuses on the crash in a NASCAR event. And some people I've even communicated with say that that's their number one reason for going to an event. Hockey, you've got the fights. I've been to several hockey, every time there was a fight, that's when there was the highest level of engagement. So to Andrew's point, that 7%, if we know that poverty breeds dysfunctional behavior, And within that dysfunctional behavior, you're going to have opportunists. You're going to have all sorts of unnecessary, well, I would say all sorts of tragic things that occur. Unfortunately, we're going to, as a society, we focus on those things, and we tend to ignore the 93%. And we also tend to ignore why we're having the conflict or the French Revolution in the first place.
So we have about 15 minutes left if we stay on schedule. But Al, in using Go Culture as a vehicle here for a minute, how would you build a team? How would you advise a corporate client to build a team properly, quote unquote, properly, to that, if done right, would generate a tribe, a feeling of cohesiveness that can do their work and work together, become friends and trusting across age, across silo, across culture, across time, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, how do you do that? How do you teach that?
Well, Ed, you woke up this morning. It's a blessing for all of us to wake up this morning.
Amen.
This morning, and you decided to brush your teeth, I believe, and put your pants on, and get yourself together. You were intentional about that because you understood that that was a fundamental aspect of being a productive citizen, a human being. So I think intentionality is the key in building a culture within an organization. I simply would focus on diversity, but not diversity of melanin, the level of melanin in someone's skin. I mean, I may have a little bit more than you gentlemen, but it doesn't, underneath, there's no difference. I don't believe that when we our respective religious or our faith, whatever that may be, for the individual, I don't believe that when we ascend, that we're going to be segregated by spirit or by however. I would focus on diversity of thought, diversity of idea, intellect, and then again, focusing back to the point that both you, Ed, and Andrew made, seeking first to understand. So individuals that are a part of a tribe that intentionally seek first to understand without just jumping in and using that sword to strike. The sword, the spoken word can be one of the most powerful, and it's written in some cases that the tongue is a sword. So literally, it's written. So I think that just simply focusing on bringing in a team that is representative of the respective customer base that you seek to engage with. So if that's the case, then it naturally would look similar to the environment, I think green spends the same. So from a business standpoint, and then we're talking colors, so black, white, pink, from a business standpoint, if green spends the same, why wouldn't we want to maximize every culture that we're marketing to? That's one thing. Another thing is just what's the right thing to do? Based upon your core fundamental values, whatever they may be, if you break it down to the lowest common denominator, what makes sense? If we truly ask ourselves just authentically ask ourselves without fear, without pride, without anything like that, what are we seeking to do? And once you do that, I think it helps bridge the gap. I mean, we've got a lot of challenges in this country, obviously, but I don't think that it's hopeless by any means. I think that once you mentioned Biden, I mean, he's a human being. So is Trump, and so we care for our fellow human beings, and we want them to be successful, and we don't judge. We just try to be more productive. So in an environment of an organization, I think it's the same thing, just ensuring that you build that tribe and then personally for me, I believe that we're leaders regardless of title. So if you're a leader, specifically if you're a people leader within an organization, then you have a responsibility actually to be intentional in what you do and how you treat individuals that you bring on board and how you select those individuals and then how you onboard them and how you develop because it's about growth every day. So you develop those individuals. One of the things that I did that I really enjoyed and opened my eyes was the first team that I managed. I'm dating myself again, 20 years ago, roughly. We had a communication system and you could send messages via this octal system. And you could ask me questions. And I said, okay, great. I'm 24/7 available. Ask me a question. I'm always here for you. And if I'm not, I will get back to you ASAP. I said, you can ask any question, but if you would, kindly include a potential solution with your question. And what that did was it fostered an environment that the team members, they developed a sense of ownership. And then they became, oh, wow, I can make an impact. I can actually do this. And it empowered them. It made them feel more like the leaders that they actually are, as we are. I mean, we've got families, we have to lead. So bringing it to, I guess, hopefully that's not too ambiguous, but I guess trying to wrap that up. Just if there's a culture that embraces love over hate or love or empathy over apathy, I think you're going to be much more well suited to attack whatever your go-to-market strategy is, as opposed to a culture that does not do that.
Thank you, Al. Andrew, your days at Walmart when you're building teams, were you intentional on people selection?
Yes, absolutely. And so part of that is inherently the problem that we're trying to face, right? Or trying to fix in diversity, equity, inclusion, is that you'll hire people you'll leave an interview and be like, wow, I really like that person. Why did you like them? It most likely was because they're very similar to you. And that's where I think, and I don't mean to speak on his behalf, but I know largely when I refer to diversity of thought, rather than just diversity of appearance, obviously diversity of appearance often begets diversity of thought, but with diversity of thought, then we can have people that look very similar, but think very differently. This is difference in upbringing, difference in socioeconomic background, difference in religion, different in country of origin. There's so many different factors. So culture is a collection of norms, values, and beliefs within a group or subgroup. So if we're looking at those pieces and we're looking at how people connect, I think we often forget, and I recently put out an article on the future of mobility describing diversity as something that mobility should be a champion of, because we've been in the intercultural space for so long that we help people connect when you're moving to a different country or moving to a different culture. Now, what is diversity, equity, and inclusion? Largely, diversity is when you're looking for those diversity of numbers, and the inclusion is how people get along, and the equity is to make sure that they all are achieving or able to achieve at the same rate. Now, those are all cultural factors, and that's why I think that Go culture works so well when you're looking at distinctive cultural behaviors, and then putting a score, not necessarily a score. I often say whenever we use it with our clients that it's not like you're getting graded here, but you are receiving a numerical value for where you stand here. And then you'll see what the normal is. And you're going to receive a training on a video and written section and actually have clear action items. So you can then move forward in a way that you know is going to be productive to say, quote unquote, improve that behavior, enhance your ability in that competency, and then take a post assessment to see where you've grown. So I often, and actually, Ed, I'll share this with you. It's kind of our secret squirrel Vendium sales training. When actually it's narrated by AI, so you'll like it. But there are three factors that people will buy something from you. And first is when you make it cheaper, faster, better. So I used to have a professor that always said, cheaper, faster, better, pick two. And I have a fundamental problem with that. So that's one thing with our bots that we'll push is saying like, hey, this is way cheaper. This will cost a third of the price of an employee or maybe less. This is way faster because you can talk to as many people as you want consistently. You can communicate instantly. You can communicate 24/7. It never gets sick, never gets tired, always gives the right answer. So it's better quality. And so when you are having conversations about conversational AI, when I'm sitting in front of a client, it's almost like pitching an ATM machine. That you are going to spend money for this, and it's going to print you money. Congratulations! Like if you so then at that point, the no to it is saying, okay, so it's going to be more expensive if you don't. It's going to take you longer, and it's going to be a lesser quality because it's going to be inconsistent. A similar thing happens with cultural training, specific around DEI, and actually specific around Go Culture, my shameless plug for them. And what we say with our clients that if you improve your employees' performance by 2 hours each year, then the product pays for itself. So in 1 year, if they've improved in just by 2 hours, then everything else is net profit. Again, ATM machine. Your team gets along better. They can be more innovative. That you have all these statistics that go along with increased innovation, increased productivity, increased profitability of companies that take diversity, equity, inclusion seriously. And the reason is that you're not doing it for the numbers to everyone high five and feel good about themselves, because that's not solving the problem. Companies are there to earn a profit. Companies can also make a good impact in the community. That's being a good corporate citizen. You do that by helping people get along, by helping teams interact better together, and helping people be more innovative because they're no longer afraid of sharing their ideas.
Amen. Wow, that's a great speech. That is great. Al, we could, we could go on all night here, I think. But Al, why don't you sum up and talk about what your objectives are as business gets near normal again?
Candidly, my objective is bigger than business. My objective would be for Go Culture to be implemented across every high school and university in the United States of America. It's bigger than the dollar for me. I would say largely in part based on vivid experience, life experience. And I think that life experience true experience is one of the best teachers of empathy. But my goal is simply to Andrew's point, we've got ATM machines. Very simply, at $48. I mean, I've been doing diversity trainings over the last decade and a half. There's been millions of dollars spent and no result in a lot of cases. Now there's an opportunity to grow that cohesion that Andrew referred to. Not only you're looking at the bottom line, you're looking at retention, you're looking at cohesion, you're looking at saving money, millions of dollars on lawsuits, things of that nature that I've witnessed. So it's a universal tool for everyone. It helped me grow within a month. I'm supposed to be right. Just by based on my appearance, I should be some diversity specialist. I should know everything there is to know about the Black culture. I've got, a lot of people coming my way. I've had my entire life, just, well, yeah, you understand this because of that, or you feel this way because of that, or you feel this way because you look like this. Unfortunately not. We're all individuals, and we all have our different lens through which we view the world. So the goal is to help us to simply seek first to understand. And when we do that first, if that's our primary goal, growth is inevitable. The ATM machine will print green dollars for all levels of melanin.
I'd like to suggest that for conversation purposes, if not now, then for the next show, that this course, this required course for 8th grade, and again in high school, 9 through 12, on call it human relations or something. And we make available an edited version of this broadcast to anyone who wants it, as a bunch of old guys talking about what's needed. All right. I don't know. Just talk.
You're not old. You're not an old guy. None of us on this call are old.
No, that's actually spot on, and I loved your point too, Ed, about of saying how this is like a library of information.
Resource library.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it entirely is. So there's a friend of mine that she'll go in and give trainings to high schools that are in alternative high schools, disadvantaged youth, and she'll go in and teach them how to do something. Right, it'll be something related to our expertise, which is in technology, and she was communicating to me the other day how she was frustrated because now it's a challenge. Work schedule is going up, can't go as often. I said, just start recording that, because then at that point, you teach them how to do one thing. And then if somebody else the next week wants to learn that, then just give them the link to it. And then at the end of the year, after doing one training a month or however many you do, then you'll have a full collection for it. So you had absolute kudos to you for doing as many as you're doing.
Yes, that's exactly. To that point, Ed, I commend you, and I thank you for inspiring me, because this is something that is, I think, the wave of the future. I see business adapting. I mean, it wasn't, again, we didn't anticipate 2020, but I think that we'll grow from it. I think that we have the opportunity to grow from it based upon our behavior and what attitudes we have. So this is exciting because we can record. It can be recorded, and it is recorded. And meeting teams or corporations can have meetings, and they can be recorded. And moving forward, they may, from an expenditure standpoint, from a cost standpoint, sometimes it's a little costly to, gather a group of, it was expensive for me to get my sales teams together in one location. Now, I think that it's important to do that, but not necessarily as consistently when we have the opportunity to do this, to utilize this venue. And it can be recorded, and it can become a part of a library that can be referenced, and everyone can grow from it. So thank you, Ed, for
I want to just anecdotally, our very first live corporate conference was in LA at the LA Chamber of Commerce. They were my host partner. At the time, I was publishing the California Bound Relocation Guides, which actually was a recruitment tool. And all the companies used it, thankfully. And so the very first meeting was in October in 1984. We wound up having around 200 people there. And our speakers were from Chevron and Apple, Paramount Pictures, Ernst & Young, some defense contractors. And they all wanted to talk with each other. but they didn't want any recordings. Now, this is 84, right? And so we didn't do that. Now, fast forward to this past year, 19 and into January and February of 20, I produced with my team, I produced about 35 meetings, all right, and played to about 1,000 people live, okay? Not one of those programs were recorded. There were snippets. Somebody held up their FaceTime and did this or that, but it was crap, it was bad. And what we found when we said, how do you like to broadcast this kind of a thing? The corporate says, I can't be on your show, all right, because they don't want to be labeled. And then some of the RMC type people were saying, oh, I don't know, someone's going to get upset with what I say. So I think it's probably a bad idea. So our meetings always were really good quality, but they're very small. I just did a lot of them. And here we are using Zoom, not just here today, but over the past 6 months. And people are sharing things to the world. The whole world can see this thing. And who knows, if you're out there, China and Iran and Russia, God love you, So, but we're sharing ideas that are, hey, they're going to come at me 50 years from now. Hey, you said this then, blah, blah, blah. And so now, if and when we go back to live meetings, albeit social distance and whatever, but will people open up? Will they speak to each other across the room in a live meeting?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So,
No,
I hope so. Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, and I'll echo. I hope so as well. I think that's a fascinating thought. I think it's interesting because of how many things are recorded now. Where I know, Ed, in one of your previous talks, you made a comment, and I entirely echo this comment of thank goodness that there weren't as many recorders when you were growing up. And likewise, if I was videotaped doing some stuff, then I may still be in jail. But I'm just
Wow.
That's funny. So I tell you may have noticed this now that I have a partial speech impediment. So when I was a kid, I was a stutterer, and my dad was a stutterer too, and so I obviously picked it up, and it took me a long time to correct it. So me doing radio shows for 10 years with Paul, and now this is like my own therapy and redemption. I mean, so that I can do it. But if I had the opportunity to do this kind of a broadcast back in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, by the time I finally licked it, conquered it, it probably would have happened faster because I'd be so embarrassed looking at stammering or looking like I'm out of control or something. So so the video, I think we're just beginning to think about how the video can be applied to interpersonal communications and reinvention of self or whatever. I mean, I'm losing words right now. Al, what do you think?
I completely agree. I wholeheartedly concur. I think that you're spot on. Using video is important. To another point that you made, though, you referenced when post-COVID comes, it will come. When that occurs and we have more live meetings again, I hope, as we said, we hope that we'll be able to have a level of engagement without fear. But not as a plug, but as truth, Go Culture, one of the things that makes Go Culture special is that there is that anonymity. So it's something that can be leveraged, via, cell phone, via, PC, and you don't have that group setting where you at times, again, you're feeling guilty, or you may feel guilty, or you may think that's a challenge, or you may not want to communicate something and you're afraid. But ultimately, I think that it's we as leaders, we must step up, whether we're afraid or not. Courage, action does not necessarily mean that you don't have fear. True leadership, I believe, is being able to stand up and speak to something that is important and communicate with candor, but with respect, and do it for the betterment of society, without being afraid. If you know that you're engaging, seeking first to understand, and that's not mine. I believe that's Covey. But if you're engaging in that way, then don't be afraid. Share, and embrace the differences. It doesn't matter if it was that unintentional shot to the nose. I was okay. It doesn't matter. It's just a matter of find it within yourself to be that courageous leader. It is that, to what you mentioned, that inner light. Nothing can dim that light that shines within, with the exception of the individual that looks in the mirror every morning. So that's my 2 cents. But again, that's my 2 cents. So I'm not afraid to share that. I'm hoping that we can get to a point as a professional community, as a country, as just a society, just worldly, all of us, as human beings, regardless of melanin, can do that and be the leaders and be courageous and step up. And because, not to be dramatic, because we talked about the sensationalism, but it is a matter of life and death in many cases. And people sometimes fail to realize that. And when you've seen that, when you've witnessed that on a firsthand basis, you've seen individuals maimed, you've seen individuals shot. This is for context, not for sympathy. I have. Those things occurred based upon a lack of empathy, just a lack of courage in some cases. So let's have that courage. Let's focus on, you talked about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King knew that he was going to be assassinated. He spoke to it, but he had the courage to push forward and try to leave a legacy. So for me, I'm willing to surrender my life as well. Not to be dramatic, but to bridge the gap. I've got beautiful babies. We talk about commonalities. And I've got an 18-year-old daughter that's just beginning college. She's in her 3rd week. And she's my heart. I've got a son that plays football, captain on the football team. He's my little guy. They are the core of my mom. They're at the center of what I live for and what I stand for. And I think that is a commonality that all of us share. We all have loved ones we all love. So if we can somehow or another take that understanding and that empathy that we show those individuals, like I show my babies, as I call them, and that I pray that they would show me wherever I may fall short. If we can take that and expand that to everyone else, and not consider another human being that we don't know the outsider or an enemy, because that's not the case, I think we'll be better for it. Noble.
All these green hands, right? That's,
Yep.
I know, I like those. I actually pick it. I look at it. I'm just thumbs up. It's either a heart. I'm a heart guy, but it's insightful. I'll hit insightful. If it's curious, I'll hit curious. It's fun.
This is great. Thank you for doing this, both of you. Appreciate
Absolutely. Thank you for enabling it.
it. A good start to the week.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one quick comment, Ed, too, is before I forget it. So when you asked about video, too, so an interesting thing. Do you know what? And I'll pose this to both of you. Do you know what the number one search engine in the world is?
I thought Google.
So it runs neck and neck with number two. So sometimes one passes the other. So do you want to guess what number two might be?
Oh,
yeah. Facebook. Yes. YouTube. Ah.
And it's because we enjoy watching things of how people communicate. There's a gentleman that probably, I don't know if you're familiar with, Ed, but I'm sure a lot of your viewers are connected with on LinkedIn. His name's Jared Jascott. And so he founded a immigration conversational AI platform called YoTangoBot, and just recently put in video into their platform. So then, like, you ask it a question, like, oh, so I see that you are moving to the United States and you have a 21-year-old child that you are going to be bringing with you. And so someone actually explaining it based off of natural language processing, I thought that was cool. We built a bot for Go Culture that does a similar thing where Al's face pops up and can station with you. And then, so yeah, I think
for that, I guess.
Right.
That's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time.
Sure. Well, and so I think that how we communicate via video is definitely going to change because it creates a human connection to something that largely was disconnected from that piece. And as long as we're good and intentional about those interactions, and then also good and intentional about recognizing that we're always being recorded. So being intentional about what we say. Talk about compliance defense when you go through diversity training to not misspeak. In case one day anyone wants to be president and will never take the job. Yeah, so that's a brilliant factor that you had with how important video is and what we do.
So, Al, how would you, if you were a headline writer for a newspaper, how would you label this broadcast we just experienced, the three of us? How can, in other words, I'm looking to post this on YouTube with instead of my mugshot, we have a headline that says, "What's this about?"
Human growth. When we stop growing and we stop learning, we essentially begin to die. It's atrophy. So we grow via dialogue. And we grow based upon others' experiences. And one of the things that I thought was, and I know we may be over time, so I'll be extremely succinct.
Don't worry.
It's one thing that I'm passionate about is if someone spent their entire life dedicated their entire life to a cause or to a specific topic, I would be a fool, for lack of a better word, if I didn't read that book, right? If I didn't try to engage with them to leverage their, not in a malicious way or a bad way, but I'm going to do what I can to learn from them and grow. So I would say human growth for the headline, or simply life, living, because you're dying if you remain guarded and you have the horse blinders on. And there's a large psychology behind that as well. But if you've got horse blinders on and you continue to just walk forward without knowing what's going on around you, and you're in your tribalism occurs within corporations, it occurs within legitimate tribes. And some people think Africa is just about tribes and elephants and lions, when my parents are from West Africa. It's a completely different story. It's just a matter of we eliminate these assumptions and we focus on human growth. Learning.
Andrew, what would you call this show?
Yeah, so I just was kind of wordsmithing even what Al was saying of so like removing cultural blindness, or actually both you gentlemen know Jorge on my team. He has a statement which I love using. They came up with it. I just shamelessly steal it all the time, of bringing people together through technology, which I love that, because I mean, largely that's what we all do, right? So Ed, you bring people together through these talks. Al, with Go Culture, you bring people together through the training, through the assessment and training, and then the development with that. I try to bring people together through our conversational AI and how to connect people using those technology webs that, transparently, actually, this is interesting to think about. Everything that we're talking about right now did not exist 20 years ago. So all of these things have been invented within our lifetimes. And that's interesting to think about, that we're now creating businesses and creating tools and using these tools every single day that didn't exist within. I would actually be curious to know if I popped on Google real quick, seeing when Zoom came out. I have a video where I talk about how the emergence of technology and how things that we use every single day, GPS, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, any form of social media. When you ask someone for their social media, they'll give you 15 different forms because there's that many of them. Humans are so disconnected with technology that as we become more intentional and with connecting people with technology, then I think that's going to be the future.
Well said.
No, thank you.
So very quickly, tomorrow, our broadcast at 11 a.m. Eastern is a 1-hour tribute to Nancy Carter from Darden Restaurant Corporation. She's retiring as relocation manager after 48 years at Darden in that role. Can you imagine? And so we have people from around the country who are going to be on that show, and it's open. I'll be promoting it later today. And then on Wednesday, our program of this week. You know what? I'm having a brain freeze. 1 second.
No worries.
Yeah. Okay.
We have grace, sir.
What?
Grace is important.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So on Wednesday, the 16th, so we have our lead speaker is a gentleman by the name of Csaba Toth, Toth. Csaba is spelled Csaba, and he's written a book about culture, about uncommon senses, personal internal senses for crazy times. And so he's going to be talking about that book with me. And also on the program is Sandra Corona, who's living in Saudi Arabia. I'm not allowed to talk about the company, but it's well known. So she has that perspective. And she's forming a new group called the Global Mobility Book Club.
Mm-hmm. And I've attended it. It's very, very cool.
Okay, so I'm helping promote that. And there'll be some special guests from around the world coming on that program as well. Now on Thursday, the special new program, and I invite you guys to consider jumping in if you want. It's at 10 a.m. Pacific, all right, for an hour. And our special guest is an inventor. We have lots of special guests, but so we have an inventor, Brian Hageman is his name. He sort of looks like the picture image of Einstein with hair and all that. But he's really a cool guy. And so he's an engineer and an inventor in Phoenix area. So anyway, his latest invention, which is caught fire, is that he's developed an engine that runs on hot water and no fossil fuel, clean energy. So one of the uses is desalinization, all right, at hardly any cost, right? All right, in that end of things. It's usually desalinization is hugely expensive because of the use of power. Anyway, he's developed this. He's going to be talking about it, and he has a video about it. So we're going to show that. So I have invited others in the genius category, and you guys fit that from, in my view. We're all different, but all right.
No,
So
the check is well, I don't know about the postal service, but the check is en route.
yeah, you can sign up and be an advertiser, but also on the show is I think you may have met him on my past shows, Daniel Cunningham. He created cubemonk.com, which is a blockchain kind of container shipment that is airtight, safe, clean, temperature controlled, and so he's developing that now. And then Lynn Greenberg, she developed an app called Pivot, which is a social well-being people finder. Went on assignment.
Pivot's
and then also on the show is Nana Haninen, which I know you don't know of her, but she's based in Finland, and she's actually a photojournalist, and so she's developed a program for education that's rolling out now in Silicon Valley. So I'm helping to promote it, and so she takes pictures, beautiful pictures, and then those who are trained in this thing show the picture, the image, still image, and say, okay, Al, what do you think of this? And okay, Andrew, what do you think of this? Okay, Ed, what do you think of this? And it's like blind people touching an elephant, and all that. And so it's about education and idea exchange within a stranger environment, and then people coming together as a result of the shared experience. Anyway, that's an invention. And lastly, we have a guy who was on our program Friday, Carlton Huskins, who's also in Texas. And he's developed
Gotta be a good guy.
A coaching system for business coaches, particularly focusing in on small business owners who aren't Walmart or IBM or whatever. They're trying to pay their bills and pay themselves and stay in business during COVID and beyond. And so coaching. So he's developed a system of that. And he, by the way, he's helping me. And so I'm helping him by getting him to have an audience. And so those are just 3 shows coming up. So it's very, very active. The 2 other things real quick. October 5. Yeah, well, we're booking already into November. My God, it's so.
That was an interesting day for me, October 5th. But I interrupt.
October 5 is going to be about media training. October 5th is media training, and our guest leader is a New York actress, Broadway actress, who's teaching public speaking to business people. Robin Hatcher is her name. So she was my radio talk show guest 10 years ago. She had just written a book called How to Get a Standing Ovation When You Speak Publicly. And now, a lot of people are afraid of that, whether they stutter or because they don't know what they're doing, right? Or they pick their nose or touch their hair, and they right, if you have hair.
I got a lot of, you got more than I do, but okay.
So Robin and I are going to be discussing media training, particularly with a view for people who are afraid to speak publicly. So that's, I think, we'll have a big audience. So why is October 5 famous for you?
Oh, That was the day that I came into this world. So some people may like that, others may not. But yeah, I've got some plans for that day. You know
So-
what? I'm an open book. I've got a special friend that she's just outstanding, and she has inspired me because to this point, you asked about a phrase, and some people tend to, even though call it defiling a temple in some cases, like ink. We were bantering and throwing around the idea of the word communication and how powerful that word is, and how essential it is to progress. And so that, October 5, communication, special friend, there's relevance there. If I may just beat around the bush there.
Got it. And October 9, there's a cultural guy who, if you haven't met yet, I'd be glad to introduce you. Michael Gates. He's based in Helsinki. He also bounces between London and Brussels and Helsinki. Michael Gates is a world famous cross-cultural trainer. Has been for many years with the Richard Lewis organization. So his topic on October 9 is going to be remote communication using video linkage, and how to be human as we talk with people cross culture, cross time, cross everything. And so that's what our topic is going to be on October 9. Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Exciting.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for listening and for being on Global TV Network. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
Thank you very much. Have a phenomenal week.
Thank you. It makes me feel good.